It was August 18, 2026, and the city had the kind of rain that did not fall so much as linger. It hung on the street lamps, it crawled down the glass, it turned every alley into a confession booth. My name is Jack Cipher. I work the cyber beat, where the bodies are routers, portals, and servers, and the killers carry payloads instead of pistols. Tonight, the case file came in heavy. 4 crime scenes. 3 of them out on the edge, where small routers sit in homes and branch offices, trusted too much and watched too little. 1 more inside a security product, the kind of place folks expect to find protection, not a loaded gun under the desk. The informant's tip, the EPSS, sat low at 2% for every case. But low odds do not mean no danger, not when exploit code is public, not when command injection is the weapon. The first armed robbery was CVE-2026-18811, CVSS-72 EPSS 2%. The victim was H3C NX15V100RO17. The broken lock was in the add function of the API-ESPs handler, where the esps.filter.url argument gets handled in a way no honest engineer should allow. This is command injection, most likely CVE-78, improper neutralization of special elements used in an OS command. The attacker sends a crafted remote request to API-ESPs. Inside that request, the esps.filter.url parameter carries shell metacharacters or command separators. The device-side add function takes that value, builds an operating system command, and fails to properly, quote, validate or isolate the input. The shell then does what shells do. It obeys. The attacker's command runs on the router. The scope is narrow in name but wide in consequence. The known affected version is H3C NX15V100RO117. These small network devices often live in homes, small offices, stores, and remote work locations. They may not have the market footprint of a giant cloud product, but they sit at the border where trust enters the room before it takes off its coat. An attacker who reaches the management interface may gain arbitrary command execution on the underlying device. That can mean changing DNS, adding persistence, proxying traffic, joining a botnet, stealing configuration, or pivoting toward internal machines. The report says the attack can be launched remotely and public exploit material exists. Authentication requirements are not clearly stated in the intelligence feed, so defenders should assume any exposed management surface is in danger until proven otherwise. Remediation starts with inventory. Sysadmins and network teams should identify every H3C NX15 running V100RO17. As of this report, no exact patched firmware build is named in the supplied intelligence, so teams should check H3C support for the first firmware release after V100R017 that addresses CVE-2026-18811, then upgrade without delay. If a patched build is not available, restrict access to API-ESPs and the full management interface to a trusted admin network or VPN only. Block wide area access. DevOps and security teams should add detection for unusual requests to API-ESPs containing characters like semicolon, backtick, dollar parenthesis, pipe, ampersand, or encoded variants. Look for sudden outbound connections from routers, changed DNS settings, new cron entries, unfamiliar startup scripts, and command names appearing in web logs. But that was not the only body on the slab tonight. The next armed robbery was CVE-2026-28812, CVSS-72, EPSS 2%. Same side of town, same rain on the pavement. The target was again H3C NX15V100RO17, but this time the loose brick was the esps.ifseps.wan function in API-ESPs. The poisoned argument was work mode. Technically, we are looking at another command injection flaw, again fitting CVE-78 if the handler passes user input into an operating system command without safe handling. The attacker sends a crafted request to API-ESPs that reaches esps.ipv6.wan. The work mode field is manipulated to include command syntax. The handler processes it as if it were ordinary configuration data for IPv6 WAN mode. Then it hands the value to a system command. The router runs the attacker's command like it came from the owner. The affected version range called out here is H3C NX15V100RO117. That may sound like a single chalk outline, but duplicated flaws in the same handler tell a bigger story. If one parameter can break into the shell, another can too. That usually means input handling is weak across the endpoint. An attacker could use this for router takeover, traffic interception, malware deployment, or lateral movement into a small office network. Remote exploitation is possible, and the exploit has been published. Authentication status is not confirmed in the brief, which means defenders should not bet the house on a login screen saving them, especially if old credentials, default accounts, or exposed admin portals are in play. The remediation mirrors the first case, but repetition is how we keep people alive in this business. Upgrade H3C NX15 V100R0117 to the vendor firmware release that explicitly remediates CVE-2026-18812 to the vendor FINI8. The provided intelligence does not name an exact fixed build, so network teams must verify the corrected release through H3C advisory channels before deployment. Until then, disable remote administration from untrusted networks. Place management behind VPN. Use firewall rules to allow only named admin addresses. Security teams should hunt for APIESP's requests where work mode contains shell control characters, URL encoding, or unexpected long strings. Watch for router processes spawning shell, WWTFTP, BusyBox, or Telnet. Those are the footprints of a burglar who did not wipe his shoes. I barely had time to light another cigarette when the next file landed on my desk. CVE 2025-29296 was not an armed robbery. It was a murder. CBSS 928 H3C Magic R592090 V2020 R0017 H3C Magic BEI 2050 0017 20000 V20000 R0017 H3C NX 400 V10000115 H3C Magic R300100009 H3C Magic R3000017 H3C Magic. The weapon was multiple command injection vulnerabilities in the APIESP's request handler. Same class of crime, bigger map. CVE-78 again sits at the center. The attacker sends crafted HTTP requests to APIESPs, placing command syntax into one or more vulnerable parameters. The request handler treats those values as configuration input, then passes them into operating system command construction. The shell interprets attacker-controlled content, and the device executes arbitrary commands. The scope here is ugly. These models cover consumer and small business routing roles, wireless access, and gateway duty. They may sit at branch edges, retail counters, home labs, and remote worker locations. A CBSS 9.8 rating tells the story in numbers. Network reachable, low complexity, likely no user interaction, and severe impact to confidentiality, integrity, and availability. An attacker gaining command execution on a router can redirect traffic, harvest credentials from passing sessions, stage malware, create hidden tunnels, disable security controls, or use the device as a launch point into richer territory. In a ransomware scenario, this kind of edge compromise can become initial access. In a supply chain scenario, it can poison updates, DNS, or trusted connectivity. Remediation needs urgency. The exact patched firmware versions were not included in the intelligence feed, so sysadmins should treat every listed affected build as unsafe until upgraded to an H3C release that names CVE-2025-29296 in its security notes. The minimum practical move is to leave the affected version line and install the vendor's corrected firmware for each model. If no corrected firmware exists for a device, remove internet exposure, isolate management, and consider replacement. Security teams should scan external attack surface for H3C management portals and close them. Detection should focus on APIESP's traffic containing shell syntax, unexpected post bodies, encoded command separators, and outbound connections from the router to unfamiliar hosts. Pull configuration backups and compare them for unauthorized DNS, route, account, or startup changes. The night was far from over. The last murder was CVE 2026-18811, CVSS 9 EPSS 2%. The product name in the report was Security Center, and that made the room go colder. This is an authenticated command injection vulnerability tied to file upload processing. The technical break is once more command injection, CVE-78, but the entry path is different. The attacker first authenticates to Security Center. Then they upload a specially crafted file. During processing, the application likely passes the file name, metadata, archive content, scan parameter, conversion value, or temporary file path into an operating system command without proper neutralization. The upload handler or post-processing component invokes the command. The attacker-controlled content changes what the operating system executes. The result is arbitrary command execution on the underlying host. The affected version range is not named in the provided report, and that is a problem defenders need to solve fast with vendor confirmation. The impact, though, is clear. Security Center products often hold privileged visibility into infrastructure. They may store credentials, scan results, asset lists, alert data, network reachability, and integration tokens. Because exploitation requires authentication, the attacker needs a valid account or stolen session first. But once inside, code execution on the Security Center server could become a master key. Real-world scenarios include privilege escalation from a low-level portal account, disabling monitoring, stealing secrets, tampering with alert history, deploying ransomware tooling, or moving laterally using trusted security infrastructure. Remediation should be led by the application owner, security engineering, and the server operations team together. Upgrade Security Center to the vendor release that specifically patches CVE 2026-18811. The intelligence feed does not provide the exact fixed version, so teams must obtain that version from the vendor advisory or support portal before closing the ticket. Until patched, restrict file upload capability to trusted administrative roles only, limit access to the application by VPN or private network, and consider disabling upload workflows if business can tolerate it. Detection should look for suspicious upload events followed by child processes such as shesh, bash, cmd, PowerShell, curl, wtar, unzip, or scripting engines, review application logs for unusual file names, archive paths, command separators, failed processing errors, and uploads from newly created or rarely used accounts. When user input reaches a command shell, the shell becomes the getaway car. Routers at the edge and security tools at the center both need the same discipline: patched firmware, private management access, tight upload control, and logs that someone actually reads before dawn. For tonight, inventory the affected H3C models, hunt for exposed AppSeps endpoints, lock down management planes, verify vendor firmware, and watch for strange outbound traffic from devices that should be quiet. For Security Center, confirm affected versions, patch the upload flaw, reduce who can upload, and inspect every upload trail like a set of muddy footprints. This is Jack Cipher signing off. Keep your ports closed, your logs warm, and your trust on a short leash. The rain always finds a crack, so do the crooks.